All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going deep on something that kind of touches everyone. No matter what you believe or where you come from, we're talking about inner peace.
Yeah, exactly. And what's really cool is the material we've been looking at. It really gives us this like a whole new way to look at what inner peace really is. It's not just some vague idea. It like described it in a way that you can almost like touch it. You know what I mean? And it shows how powerful it can be, how it can like totally change the way we see
It
everything.
really does. I mean, it talks about things like serenity, right,
Mm-hmm.
and a really deep sense of tranquility. It even talks about this feeling of like being outside of time, like we normally think of it, completion, fulfillment, stillness, light, and it's a lot, and it really makes you think there's got to be something more to it than just like feeling good for a little while.
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely pointing to like a huge shift in our whole way of being, you
Hmm.
know? And it also talks about how powerful this kind of peace can be. And it uses some pretty intense examples to show what it means. Like, think about near-death experiences, right? People come back from those and they see life totally differently. Or like Shangri-La in that movie Lost Horizon. It's like this mythical place where just being there, being in that peace, it like changes people.
Yeah, it's wild. It's like experiencing this deep peace. It's like hitting a reset button or something. Like it changes our whole understanding of the world, and how we fit into it. And the material even says that once you've really connected with this peace, you're not just like knocked around by everything that happens anymore. Like you're not just a victim of whatever the world throws at you.
That's a really key point. It's this idea that experiencing peace gives you a peek into something, like a more real reality. And what's interesting is it says that the way to get to this reality is through like surrender. It says that if we keep surrendering, we can like uncover this deeper nature of things and experience peace more and more and like way deeper.
Okay, so let's break down this feeling of peace itself. The text gives us some specific things to look for, like how it feels. It talks about not having any conflict inside, no negativity at all, and just like this total feeling of lovingness. I mean, that sounds pretty amazing, doesn't it?
It does, and it goes even deeper. It says that when you're in this state, everything you do just flows, like effortlessly. Everything's spontaneous, harmonious, and it all comes from a place of love. It's like you're not fighting yourself or the world anymore.
And it's not just like what's going on in our heads, right? It talks about how our whole perception of the universe changes, like how we see our connection to everything.
Mm.
And this inner self becomes way stronger than our normal everyday self, the
Yeah.
one that's always worried and caught up in all our beliefs and stuff.
Exactly. It's like we go beyond the ego, that little I that's always chattering away and freaking out about stuff. It's like this deeper awareness, this inner self that becomes the main way we experience reality. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, it is. So let's dig a little deeper into this whole profound impact thing. The stuff about near-death experiences and Lost Horizon, it really makes you think.
Hmm.
The idea that this peace, it changes you so deeply that you always want to get back to it. It makes you wonder what that peace is really like.
Right. And what's so interesting is it's not just saying that it's like a nice feeling that fades away. It's more like it totally changes your whole worldview. Once you've been in that deep peace, the material says that you're not just controlled by what's happening around you anymore. It's like you've seen like a whole different level of reality.
And that brings us right back to surrender, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It says that if we keep practicing surrender, these experiences, they happen more often and they get way stronger. It's like we're training ourselves to tap into something that's already there.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's like there's this analogy they use in the text about clouds blocking the sun, and it's pretty powerful. They're saying that peace isn't something we have to like go out and find.
Yeah.
It's already there. It's our true nature. Surrender is just about clearing away the stuff that's in the way, like all the clouds of our thoughts and doubts and all that, so we can finally see the sun.
And then it gets even more interesting. They start talking about this link between peace and strength, and they even bring in kinesiology, which is, the study of how the body moves.
Yeah.
The idea is that someone who's in a state of peace, they have this physical strength that can't be messed with, even by like mental or emotional stuff.
Yeah.
That's a pretty unexpected connection, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And it kind of ties into the idea of like not being so attached to our body as our only identity.
Yeah.
It's saying that when you're in this deep peace, physical pain or sickness, it doesn't control you the same way anymore because you're not just your body, your sense of self has moved beyond that. And it's interesting because it suggests that our limitations, like what we think we can and can't do, they're often because of our mental and emotional state, not just our physical body. So it's like inner peace and what we can do in the world, they're way more connected than we might think.
So inner peace isn't just about being calm and relaxed. It's like a source of real strength. Like it makes us, as the text says, unassailable. It's saying that when you're grounded in that deep peace, you're not affected by intimidation, manipulation, control, all that stuff that usually gets to us,
Right, exactly. It's like by letting go of that part of us that feels vulnerable,
Yeah.
our ego and all its fears, we're actually getting rid of the root of what causes suffering in our lives. Pretty radical, huh?
Yeah, it is. And then it brings up this whole idea of silent transmission, which I thought was super interesting. It talks about people who are like enlightened and in a state of grace. It's like peace can be, I don't know, shared or something just by being around someone, but without actually saying anything.
Yeah, it's like it's saying there's this nonverbal energy that comes from being around someone who's really embodying this peace,
Mhm.
like a spiritual teacher, a saint, a sage. And it's interesting because throughout history, people have always been drawn to these kinds of people, even though they might not fully understand why. It's like, have you ever heard of how tuning forks work? Like when one vibrates at a certain frequency, another one nearby that's tuned to the same frequency will start vibrating too, even without touching it.
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of like that. The peace that an enlightened person embodies, it's like it resonates with the people around them and can kind of wake up that same peace within them.
I see, yeah. And it's not about what they're saying, right? It's about this energy that they're giving off, this high frequency energy, and it's sometimes called like transmission of no mind or the grace of the guru. And what's important is that it's not like a personal gift or anything. It's something that just radiates out to everyone. It's unconditional. Like that image of the Buddha just like silently giving a flower to his disciple. It really says it all. It's like communication that goes beyond words.
Yeah, exactly. It's saying that the reason being around these teachers has such a big impact, it's not just because of the stuff they teach, but because you're picking up on this like vibration of peace and surrender. It's like an energy thing. It's not about logic or words. Words might be a way to like point you in the right direction, but it's the energy itself that really changes you.
And this energy, it actually affects us on a really deep level, right? It
Yeah.
says it becomes part of our aura. It influences our brain, our whole being. That's a pretty big idea about how energy and consciousness are connected.
It is, and it shows just how connected everything really is. And then it gets to this really important point. It says that this peace energy flowing out from people, it's like essential for humanity, like for everyone's well-being. It's like a counterforce to all the negativity and destruction in the world.
Whoa. So it's like trying to find inner peace. It's not just a selfish thing. It's actually helping everyone. Like the more peaceful we become, the more we're actually contributing to making the world a better place.
Hmm.
That adds a whole new dimension to things, doesn't it?
It really does. It's pretty inspiring, actually. And then the text goes on to talk about like even higher states of awareness, state where there's like no desire anymore. It's wild. It says that in these states, you get what you need without even trying. Like it just happens naturally. It's like being totally in sync with how everything works. Wow. Yeah, it's like having total trust in life, right? And it also says that in these states, your thoughts are super powerful, like they manifest really fast. And there's always these synchronicities happening. It's like the universe is like right there with you, reflecting and responding to everything you're feeling inside.
Exactly. It's like the laws of cause and effect, the way the whole universe works, it all becomes clear. But these higher states, it's not like we can force them or control them. They just kind of happen. But as we keep surrendering, they become more frequent and last longer. And eventually it's like we just naturally want to make that peace a permanent part of our experience.
Hmm.
And then the text goes into this really personal story about experiencing this profound peace, like after 3.5 years of constantly surrendering. And it's really details like a turning point in the whole thing. It really helps you understand everything that's been talked about so far. It sets the scene, right? It's a cold winter day, and this person's been surrendering like crazy for 11 days straight, like really focused on letting go of the ego and the whole idea of being a separate self. It sounds like a really intense time.
It does. And then Just like that, in this totally ordinary moment, they're walking into a restaurant and bam, this incredible transformation happens. It's described as like this complete stillness and peace, so deep that it's beyond anything we can imagine. And it's like outside of time and space, like we normally experience it.
Yeah, and the way it describes this feeling of interconnectedness, it's so vivid. Like it's this sense of one life flowing through everything, one self expressing itself in all beings.
Yeah.
And there's no attachment to the body anymore. It's just like another thing in the environment, no more or less important than anything else.
Yeah. And the way it talks about emotions and events, it's like they're all seen as part of this bigger picture. They're all just arising naturally from this deeper nature that's always there. And it uses this really powerful image. It talks about this rock-like quality to describe the stillness. It's like it's unshakable. And there's this realization that the true self, it's not something you can see, it's timeless. And our normal idea of who we are, it's just temporary, like an illusion almost. And what's really important here is that it's like our identity shifts. We go from this limited I to this awareness that we're all connected. Like it's that separation that causes us to suffer.
It's like the sense of being a separate self, it just disappears. Even the word I doesn't mean anything anymore. It's replaced by this awareness of being everything. It's like the ego completely dissolves. And the craziest part is it says that this whole experience of being separate, it all started from just a wishful thought. That's a pretty mind-blowing concept, right?
It is. And then there's this like crystal clear understanding of the universe as a hologram, which is something that, ancient Buddhist teachings talk about and modern physics is starting to understand too. It says that in this state, it becomes so obvious that everything is already perfect and complete just as it is. There's no need for desires or to create anything or to become something else. There's just the awareness of that, the source of everything, not as like a creator, but as the ground of all being.
And this awareness, it feels totally familiar, like coming home after a long journey. And there's no emotions or personal feelings anymore, even physical sensations. They're just there, but they don't belong to you. It's like that thought experiment they talk about where they think of like butter or coffee and the waiter just shows up with it. It's pretty amazing. It shows how connected everything is and how powerful our intention can be in that state.
It really highlights like the potential of our minds when we're aligned with that deeper reality. It's like communication that goes way beyond words. And the way it describes the body, it's like it just keeps doing its thing like a karmic wind-up toy, and you're just watching it, not controlling it. It's like that idea we have of ourselves as like the doer, the one in control. It's kind of funny when you see it from this perspective,
Yeah, it's like realizing that we're not really the ones running the show. And then there's this understanding that everything we see, everything we experience, it's all like vibrations of the mind.
Yeah.
Nothing has its own separate reality. It's all just one. It's like a complete shift in how we understand reality.
Yeah.
And then talks about coming back to normal consciousness. And it's not like a decision that I made.
Yeah.
It's more like this choice that just arises on its own from somewhere deeper.
Yeah, like the desire to experience being an individual again just kind of pops up and you're watching it happen, not really deciding anything. And the return to normal consciousness, it just unfolds naturally, and by the next morning, it's complete. But it's not the same, There's this new understanding of who you are. Like, you accept that you chose to have this individual experience, but you're not trapped by the idea that it's the only reality.
It's amazing how these, like, super personal, almost mystical experiences, they're starting to line up with what science is discovering. Talks about how these states of consciousness are becoming relevant in like quantum mechanics and stuff, the study of subatomic particles and all that. And it's interesting because modern physics is finding that at the quantum level, particles aren't really solid things. They're more like probabilities and energy fields that are all connected. And that sounds a lot like what mystics have been saying for centuries, that there's this one interconnected reality underneath everything.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing how it's all coming together. And what's really cool is that science is showing that the basic building blocks of reality, they're not like solid objects like we usually think. They're more like events of energy frequency. And they're even starting to think that there might be this like transcendent frequency that exists beyond time and space like we normally understand them. And then you've got the research on how the brain works, how it makes sense of reality by analyzing these frequency patterns. And it all leads to this idea of the holographic universe. Like, think of a hologram where if you break it into pieces, each piece still contains the whole image.
Right.
And the idea is that maybe our minds are kind of like that, Each of us might have the whole universe inside us, which is like a crazy level of interconnectedness that we usually don't even realize is there. So it's like Everything is connected, and each of us has this potential to like reflect the whole universe in our own minds. It's it's a pretty huge idea, and it really blurs the lines between what's individual and what's universal. Totally. And the fact that more and more people are getting interested in the connection between consciousness and science, like all the books and researchers, it mentions people like Prebram and Bohm and all the work on the holographic paradigm. It's like a sign that science is starting to change the way it understands reality.
And the theories of Pribram and Bohm, they're saying that our brains actually create the reality we experience by interpreting frequencies from like a higher dimension,
Hmm.
and that the whole universe works like a giant hologram. It's crazy how that lines up with what mystics and people who've had these profound experiences have been saying all along. It's like science and mysticism are both coming to the same conclusions about reality,
Yeah.
but from different directions.
Exactly. And the text says that surrender is another way to understand this ultimate reality, like a way to experience it for yourself, to verify it. And it uses the analogy of climbing a mountain, where each time you surrender, it's like taking another step up. And it's saying that some people might stop at different points along the way, but the path always leads to the same peak. And at the peak, there's no need to prove anything anymore because you've completely surrendered.
So in this deep dive, we've really gone deep into this idea of inner peace, which the text says is like a fundamental part of who we are, something that everyone wants no matter what they believe. We've seen how powerful it can be, how experiencing it can completely change the way we see reality. And we've talked about surrender as the way to get there, this constant letting go that leads us to deeper and deeper peace. And finally, we've touched on how all this ancient wisdom is starting to line up with what modern science is discovering.
It all points to this amazing interconnectedness that's at the heart of everything, you know? And it suggests that reality might be way more fluid and interconnected than we think it is.
And on that note, here's something to think about. If the universe really is a hologram and we're all connected on this deep level, what does that mean for our search for inner peace? Is it possible that it's not just about finding peace for ourselves, but that it's actually vital for the well-being of everyone, like a contribution to the whole? Take some time to think about your own experiences with peace and this idea of interconnectedness. And thanks for joining us for this deep dive.